Brilliant, incredible, amazing, show-stopping, spectacular, never the same, totally unique, completely not ever been done before.
But wow, what a moment. I will never forget.
Over the past few months, I think it's very fair to say that the soapy Skeem Saam seems to have found its way back into the cultural zeitgeist and mainstream pop culture of South Africa, mainly because of the Mapitsi storyline that had fans thoroughly entertained. With reports indicating that the show managed to pull in over 3.7 million viewers for SABC, an impressive feat, especially in an era defined by rapid media consumption and shrinking attention spans due to social media. This milestone made me reflect on how once upon a time, such numbers were not only common, but were expected for SABC. There was once a time when a particular show consistently drew millions of viewers every single night, 5 times a week. In short, this recent excitement reminded me of a time when 8 p.m. was 8 p.m. and we all collectively tuned in to watch the iconic soapy Generations. When we had a variety of good shows to watch at our disposal. I'm talking about Generations, Zone 14, Intersections, Home Affairs, Soul Buddies, My Perfect Family. The list is endless, all of which were available to watch from SABC 1, 2, 3 to ETV. We really had it good, but somehow along the way, we lost that. We lost what I at least would call good television. In this video, I want to talk about everything I think led us to this point, to the point where we no longer have set schedules of what to watch as a country. There are many things that I think have contributed to this, the biggest one in my eyes being the end of Generations. With this video, I want to ask the question, what happened to South African television? As the television industry has not achieved the success it once was very capable of achieving. I have a theory, and today I want to discuss. So let's talk about what happened to South African television.
I have the right to be bad at something when I first start, okay? I have the right to be bad at it. I just started. And I had to tell myself that a lot when I started making music. Like, you have the right to suck right now. You just started. You also have the right to not say something that's cool. You have the right to be vulnerable. You have the right to be corny, whatever. I have the right to be whoever I am in this hour, and then I must move on. I must.
Hello and welcome back to the Chanel. I promise it will not be another 9 months before the next video drops, okay? I just want to say thank you for all the positive feedback on the first video. If you haven't seen it yet, please be sure to check it out after this one. My name is Enganati. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Now let's get straight into it. Chapter 1. The history of South African television. So before we talk about South African television as we know it today, I want us to take it all the way back to the beginning. How did we ever even get to have something called television in South Africa? Television in South Africa was only officially introduced in the year 1976, which is incredibly late when we compare ourselves to the rest of the world. According to South African History Online and this one YouTube video I watched, I'll link it in the description box below, this delay was due to the fact that the apartheid government believed that television would be a corrupting influence on society. Basically, they feared that television would broadcast content showing interracial mixing, and this went against their segregationist agenda. Eventually though, television was introduced due to growing public demand. A key moment often cited is the 1969 moon landing, where many South Africans were frustrated with the fact that they couldn't watch Neil Armstrong take his historic steps live on the moon, as people in many countries had the opportunity to do so. This moment became symbolic of just how far behind South Africa was. When television was finally launched in 1976, it would come under the control of the South African Broadcasting Corporation, which we know today as SABC. The only channel introduced was TV1, which mainly catered to white audiences, and it broadcast in English and Afrikaans. Then in 1982, the SABC introduced TV2 and TV3, which were meant to serve black urban audiences. These channels broadcast in languages such as isiZulu, isiXhosa, Sesotho, and Setswana. Eventually, in 1985, they added TV4, which was a more entertainment and sports-focused channel. The point is, by the mid-80s, South African television was already programming for a wide range of language and cultural groups. Now, this is the intention I'm talking about. Then, in 1996, SABC was fully restructured into the format we know today, which was SABC 1, SABC 2, and SABC 3. Then came the game changer. In 1998, ETV launched South Africa's first free-to-air commercial channel. So unlike SABC, it wasn't state-owned. It was funded through adverts, and it immediately made waves by offering a mix of international movies, action series, and slowly building up its local and news content. A thread I want to reference, just to talk more about the intention that once existed with South African television, is by Miss Apiwe Mame on Twitter, and she says the following: "People often ask what shaped the South African TV landscape of the late 90s, 2000s, and early 2010s. Why did we get shows that felt socially conscious, emotionally resonant, and deeply rooted in everyday life?" The SABC, which had functioned under apartheid as a state propaganda body, was legally reframed as a public service broadcaster with a democratic mandate. And so, the Broadcasting Act in 1999 was introduced, and it required SABC to do the following. It was to support democracy and nation building, provide educational and lifelong learning content, reflect South Africa's linguistic and cultural diversity, and also strengthen the moral and social fabric of society. In other words, television was tasked with helping people imagine and practice a new society. To make this tangible, the SABC worked closely with the Department of Education in developing the Education Broadcasting Plan. This was not just schooling by TV, but it was a broader vision for using media to share knowledge in accessible ways and address urgent public health and social issues. And so this is why we see that they told stories that showed ordinary life with all of its challenges, contradictions, joys, and violences in the new South Africa. So then what happened to these shows with multi-layered characters and storylines that reflected society? Chapter 2, The End of Intention. So what happened to programming that was intentional? When you had shows that were available to anyone with a TV set that had meaning, quality, and care, before we even talk about the channels you could access with DSTV. Call me crazy, but I believe the early to the mid-2010s marked a major turning point in South African television, and the moment that defines this shift for me is the end of generations. Chapter 3, The Fall of a Cultural Institution. So when generations disappeared from our screens, at the time I didn't understand what was happening, but the cast was demanding better pay, but management refused. And this wasn't new in South Africa, as actors being underpaid was, and in some instances today, is industry standard practice.
Black actors have never been viewed or regarded as good actors. There have been situations where, I've been getting a remark saying, even my white actors are not getting as much as you are. And I'm busy negotiating with, even with the generation. They don't want to pay me what I want. And which is said, and they're busy saying the budget is like this. How do I know the budget? Tell us the budget and let us know how much is it that is there.
The producers decided to throw away over 10 years of story building and start from scratch. They chose the cheaper option. Generations, the legacy was born. But for many of us, the magic was gone. According to a Mail and Guardian article from August 2014 titled "Striking Generations Cast Members Sacked," 16 actors were fired after going on a strike for better pay and fairer contracts. They had demanded higher salaries, 3-year contracts, royalties for rebroadcasts, and syndication fees from international sales. When their concerns were ignored, all 16 of them were dismissed. The show was rebooted with a few familiar faces, but something fundamental had changed. Chapter 4, the cracks widen. Now this moment revealed deep cracks, not only in South African television, but in the creative industry as a whole. Because I think this was a missed opportunity for the government to intervene. Generations was a cultural institution. Why did no one step in? If this had happened in sports, for example, with the Springboks, and half of the team complained about pay, it would have made national headlines and inspired action. But because actors aren't viewed as real workers, nothing happened. This apathy cemented a system where fair pay and professional treatment for artists are still neglected today. And I think if things had gone differently with the Generations cast, this would have definitely marked a turning point in the creative industry for South Africa. Generations gave us something local and aspirational. We had black excellence, CEOs, compelling drama without over-sexualization, and a cross-generational appeal. Losing it sent a message across the industry that if the most successful show's cast could be fired overnight, no creative worker was safe. And thus we move into Chapter 6, the shift toward replication. Now this didn't necessarily begin after Generations, but South African television began to mimic global, mostly American tropes because the local storytelling identity started to fade. There used to be a culture of being home by 8 p.m. to watch Generations. In school the next day, everyone was talking about the previous episode from the night before. That kind of collective experience rarely happens today. Instead of prioritizing talented actors and strong storytelling, the focus moved to what would generate the most money or social media attention. Casting became about who had the largest following, not who could perform. Today we've shifted toward gangster dramas, hyper-commercialized soapies, and that's all good and well because what people find entertaining does naturally change from generation to generation. But I think there's something to be said about the message that came with the end of Generations. We had shows on SABC 1 such as Live Amp, which introduced us to our own stars like Bonang Mateba, Mini Dlamini. We had The Link with Lerato Kganyago and Zaziwa with Pearl Mudiadi, and many others. What happened to these talent hubs? Because these systems actively nurtured South African talent. Even with DSTV, we had the Vuzu channel and V Entertainment, and these channels gave platform to our very own stars. Shows such as 10/10 kept us engaged with our artists during the rise of social media. These weren't just for entertainment purposes, but they were platforms. I'd honestly be seated for a resurgence of old shows, but in order for that to happen, or for the new works to be made, we do need better management, fairer systems, and more investment in originality. Now, as the years progressed, DSTV did grow in popularity, and this is where I think we started to see SABC productions slowly move to the background. While DSTV did create a platform for local work, it also introduced audiences to a wide range of international movies and shows. And so naturally, this meant that international productions would become the main source of entertainment for many South Africans. Chapter 7, the light at the end of the tunnel. I don't want to only highlight the problems within the industry, because that's not all there is to say about South African television, as there have been some major moments of progress that do in fact give us hope. I can't talk about South African TV, especially today, without celebrating the work that's been produced through Mzansi Magic and Ferguson Films. Now, Mzansi Magic launched in 2010 as part of MultiChoice's push in order to prioritize local storytelling. It quickly became one of the most watched channels, giving us shows such as Isibaya, Gomorrah, and most recently, Shaka Ilembe. Now, Ferguson Films was founded by actress Connie and the late Shona Ferguson that same year, and it changed the game completely. They were frustrated by the lack of opportunities, and so they created their own lane with the show Rockville and followed it up with hit after hit, including shows such as The Queen, The Throne, The Imposter, and Kings of Joburg. I think this is a nice note to end this video on, because it highlights how there is in fact a lot of talent in our industry. I mean, South African music, dance, and sports are thriving globally right now. And so there's no reason for our television to not be able to do the same. And I think that, if anything, is what I'm saying with this video. Please drop your recommendations below. It can be a YouTube series, a Facebook drama, or even old school SABC gems. Until next time.